While its origins date back to the curiosity exhibitions of the mid-16th century, circus sideshows or freak shows, as they were then called, were immensely popular forms of entertainment in the 19th and early 20th century England and America. These roving performances embodied the eerie and enigmatic corner of the circus, where stepping into a tent transported onlookers into a realm of peculiarities and wonders. Everyone remembers the garish posters and outlandish nicknames, but what about the lives of the performers themselves? Here are the real-life stories behind some of the most legendary sideshow performers the world has ever known. Number 15, General Mite. Francis Joseph Flynn, better known by his stage name, General Mite, was born in 1864 in New York and reached just 21 inches in height as an adult. Presented as one of the smallest men alive, he was introduced to the public early on. He toured major exhibition halls and circuses across the US, UK, and Australia, often dressed in ornate military uniforms and seated beside oversized furniture to exaggerate his size. Though presented as a novelty, Flynn maintained a sharp stage presence and regularly charmed audiences with humor and wit. In 1884, he married English little person Millie Edwards in a lavish ceremony that made international headlines. While their stature fascinated crowds, the couple handled the spectacle with grace. Eventually, Flynn relocated to Australia, where he led a quieter life. He died in 1898 from tuberculosis. Though remembered for his size, it was how he owned it, with confidence and charm, that left the real impression. General Mite's legacy was small in inches, but never in stature. Number 14, Robert Melvin. Robert, aka the man with two faces, lived a life that nearly mirrored his nickname. Born on May 9, 1920 in Missouri, he was one of 6 siblings and quickly drew attention for his look. Robert had neurofibromatosis, a condition that causes fibrous tumors, which prominently affected the right side of his face. Because of this, he was initially barred from attending school, though he still managed to complete a full education. His outgoing personality won over the people in his small town, who grew to respect and admire him. He never saw his condition as something to hide. In 1949, he joined the sideshow scene at Coney Island, where his distinctive look became his strength. He wasn't just a featured act. He also worked as the show's bookkeeper, earning a respectable income. Known for being calm, generous, and intelligent, Robert earned the affection of family, friends, and his circus peers. He didn't just perform, he belonged. Number 13, Millie and Christine. Millie and Christine were conjoined twins born into slavery in North Carolina in 1851. Joined at the lower spine, they shared a single body but had 2 fully functional heads. Throughout their early years, they were sold to multiple owners and groomed as performers, gaining fame as the Two-Headed Nightingale. Following emancipation, they were reunited with their birth mother and chose to continue touring. The twins were multilingual, harmonized beautifully, and even played piano together. Their intelligence and stage presence won admiration that far surpassed mere novelty. They published an autobiography and used their growing platform to advocate for African American rights. Though they shared one body, their personalities, tastes, and thoughts remained distinct. Bound together both physically and emotionally, they were inseparable until death. Millie passed first in 1912, followed by Christine just hours later. Their legacy wasn't shaped by their condition, but by their resilience and bond. Together, they navigated a world determined to define them and rewrote the narrative themselves. Number 12, Lucia Zarate. Lucia Zarate was born in Mexico in 1864, and this lady holds the record as one of the smallest adults in medical history. Weighing only 4 pounds and standing just 24 inches tall, she was diagnosed with Majewski osteodysplastic primordial dwarfism type 2. By age 12, she was already performing in the U.S. under the title Smallest Living Woman. Despite her fragile size, Lucia's stage presence was sharp, confident, and captivating. She traveled widely with her manager, performing at museums and exhibitions throughout the country. Audiences weren't just stunned by her size, they remembered her alertness, wit, and command of the stage. But her life was never easy. In 1890, while traveling to a performance in Colorado, her train became stranded in a brutal snowstorm. With no heat for days, Lucia died of exposure at just 26 years old. Her life was brief, but unforgettable. Though tiny in frame, Lucia left a legacy far larger than anyone expected, graceful, vibrant, and permanently etched into sideshow history. Number 11. Elizabeth Green. Elizabeth, aka the Stork Woman, was born in the late 1800s with a distinctive facial structure, a long, slender nose and a narrow chin, which naturally gave her a bird-like profile. Sideshow promoters quickly latched onto her appearance, branding her with a name that stayed with her throughout her career. She performed with traveling circuses in the early 20th century, including Ringling Brothers and other major acts. Her costumes, often feathered and theatrical, played up the avian image to match her billing. But offstage, Elizabeth was anything but a caricature. She was witty, confident, and quick to laugh, challenging the flat, sorrowful stereotype often placed on sideshow performers. She maintained her own finances, managed her contracts, and navigated the business side of her career at a time when few women in entertainment had that autonomy. While not as widely remembered as others, her story stands as proof that even in a world built on spectacle, Elizabeth kept her narrative and her dignity firmly in her own hands. Number 10. Mademoiselle Gabrielle. Mademoiselle Gabrielle was born in 1884 in Austria-Hungary with sacral agenesis, a rare condition that left her without legs and only one fully developed arm. Despite these physical limitations, she radiated elegance, beauty, and presence. She began performing in European exhibitions and was eventually brought to the United States, where she was billed as the half-woman. But Gabrielle was more than a sideshow act. She was fiercely independent, articulate, and educated. She spoke several languages and was admired for her impeccable style and commanding stage demeanor. Her performances emphasized poise and sophistication, challenging how audiences viewed disability. She married at least twice and later stepped away from public life. Unlike many performers of her era, Gabrielle maintained full control over her image and career. Her legacy isn't simply one of endurance, but one of autonomy. She refused to let her condition define her, choosing instead to shape an identity rooted in confidence, intellect, and refined individuality. Gabrielle was admired, not pitied. Number 9. Aloisia Wagner. Aloisia Wagner, better known by her stage name Violetta, was born around 1906 or 1907 in Germany. Born without arms or legs due to a condition resembling tetra amelia syndrome, she defied all expectations from the start. At 15, she joined the sideshow circuit, where she immediately impressed audiences with her skill and self-sufficiency. By 17, she crossed the Atlantic to join the Ringling Brothers in 1924, quickly becoming one of their most remarkable performers. She could thread needles, sew, comb her hair, and even dress herself, all using just her torso, shoulders, and chin. Later, she performed at the Dreamland Circus sideshow, where her act left people speechless. But Violetta didn't ask for sympathy. She carried herself with grace, pride, and poise in a space that often sold sorrow. While others may have stared, she kept moving forward, entirely in control. Her message was clear without ever needing to be said. Number 8. Krao Farini. Krao Farini was born in Laos in 1876 with hypertrichosis, a genetic condition that covered her body and face in fine, dark hair. Discovered as a child and brought to Europe by impresario Guillermo Antonio Farini, she was promoted as the missing link, supposed living proof of Darwin's theory. Under the stage name Krao the Darwinian Wonder, she toured scientific exhibitions and circuses, drawing massive audiences. While her appearance was often sensationalized, Krao herself was intelligent, multilingual, and frequently interacted with spectators with grace and clarity. Behind the banners was a thoughtful, self-aware woman who managed fame with composure. She continued performing for decades and eventually settled in Brooklyn, where she lived independently until her death in 1926. Though her story was buried under years of fabricated narratives, those who knew her spoke of dignity and perseverance. Krao was never proof of evolution. She was a singular individual navigating spectacle with strength, wit, and her own quiet power in a world that never asked what she wanted. Number 7. Melvin Burkhart. Melvin was born in 1907 in Atlanta and made a career doing things no one else dared. Best known as the human blockhead, he stunned audiences by driving nails deep into his nasal cavity, without flinching. A boxing injury that altered his sinus anatomy made this possible, and he turned that anatomical anomaly into a lifelong profession. But Melvin wasn't a one-trick act. He seamlessly combined fire-eating, knife-throwing, contortion, and sword-swallowing into a captivating performance. He worked in circuses, vaudeville shows, and at Coney Island, becoming a sideshow staple for decades. What truly distinguished Melvin wasn't just the shock factor, it was his wit. He delivered his routines with dry humor, transforming discomfort into laughter. His career lasted over 60 years, and even in old age, he performed with the same skill and control. Melvin Burkhart didn't just command his own body, he commanded the audience. One cringe-inducing act at a time, he mastered the art of making the grotesque entertaining. Number 6. Ernie Defort. Having a parasitic twin isn't something anyone can prepare for, but Ernie Defort lived with it from the beginning. A second torso, headless and limbless, attached to his chest. Sideshow promoters branded him as two boys with one head, and for a time that identity paid the bills. It wasn't glamorous, but it was reliable. At 12, everything changed. The twin began to compress his lungs and heart, and doctors warned he wouldn't survive without surgery. The operation was successful, but deeply personal. For Ernie, the twin wasn't just a condition, it was a part of him. Losing it meant rebuilding from zero. He returned to performing briefly, but the act no longer stunned crowds. The draw had vanished. Eventually, he stepped away from the spotlight. No more banners, no more spectators, just a quieter life, and a story no one else could truly understand. His life was spent between two selves. In the end, he reclaimed it as one. Number 5. Jojo the Dog-Faced Boy. Fedor was born in Russia in 1868 and inherited hypertrichosis from his father, resulting in thick facial hair that would make him world famous as Jojo the Dog-Faced Boy. Trained to growl and bark during performances, he became a headline act in P.T. Barnum's circus. Though presented as a savage raised by wolves, Fedor was well-spoken, literate, and fluent in multiple languages. Beneath the animalistic act was a kind, articulate man who privately detested the role he was forced to play. Yet despite being boxed into a degrading character, he toured the globe, earning both fame and financial success. His relationship with Barnum reflected the era, profitable but exploitative. Fedor never escaped the costume of his character, but those who met him saw intelligence and quiet dignity behind the fur. He died of pneumonia in 1904. Though history remembers the dog-faced boy, Fedor Jevtichew's life tells a more complex story. one of performance, survival, and a man far more human than the image allowed. Number 4. Mignon, the Penguin Lady. Folk-Amelia shaped Mignon's arms and legs into flipper-like limbs, but it never slowed her drive. She built a life as both a talented musician and beloved sideshow performer, dazzling audiences with her marimba skills and commanding presence. Crowds at venues like the 1933 Chicago World's Fair were blown away by her grace and musical ability. Nicknamed the Penguin Lady, she embraced her act with pride, never letting her condition define her. Her personal life was just as striking. She married twice, including to a fellow performer known as Hoppy the Frog Boy, who also had physical differences. Despite relentless public attention, she kept her private world separate from her career. After her final performance, Mignon quietly vanished from the public eye. Her story was never built on pity. It was about talent, pride, and presence. Though her later years remain a mystery, like ancient relics, her imprint on circus history is impossible to erase. Number 3. Betty Broadbent. Betty was born in 1909 in Philadelphia and became one of the most recognizable faces in circus history, not for acrobatics, but for turning her entire body into artwork. Nicknamed the Tattooed Venus, she began collecting tattoos at age 14 and accumulated more than 565 by the height of her career. Her body displayed portraits, florals, religious images, and eccentric designs. She joined Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, becoming one of the first heavily tattooed women to achieve mainstream visibility. But Betty wasn't just a walking canvas. She was also a skilled steer rider and carried herself with poise, making her a favorite among photographers. In 1939, she competed in a beauty pageant at the World's Fair, directly challenging society's narrow views of female beauty. After retiring in 1967, she remained an icon in the tattoo world until her death in 1983. Betty didn't follow trends. She defined them. Number 2. Otis Jordan, the Frog Boy. Mobility was never part of Otis Jordan's life, but self-reliance absolutely was. Born with arthrogryposis, a rare condition that severely restricted limb function, Otis learned to move through life his own way. He became an expert appliance repairman, using just his mouth and 2 semi-functional fingers. Nicknamed the Frog Boy for his crouched posture, he amazed sideshow audiences with a cigarette-rolling act performed entirely using his mouth. But beyond the tent, Otis was much more than a performer. He took on speaking engagements, told his story without filters, and never allowed himself to be viewed as a victim. His wit, honesty, and confidence made him a fan favorite, not just for what he could do, but for who he was. Number 1. Stephan Bibrowski. Born in 1891 near Warsaw, Stephan had a rare condition called hypertrichosis, which caused dense hair to grow across his face and body. His mother believed the condition came from a traumatic encounter with a lion during pregnancy, a myth that showmen later turned into marketing gold. Stephan's entire body was cloaked in long, flowing hair, 8 inches on his face, 4 inches elsewhere. By age 4, his mother, overwhelmed, placed him in the care of a German promoter named Meyer, who gave him a stage name, Lionel the Lion-Faced Man. Under Meyer's management, Lionel began performing publicly. His lion-like features drew crowds, but it wasn't just his appearance that fascinated people. He was multilingual and intelligent. Lionel toured throughout Europe and the United States, appearing in magazines, postcards, and exhibitions. Beneath the fur was a thoughtful man with a deep love for art and books. He took what could have left him isolated and turned it into a life of success. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in with us, and we'll see you soon.